the other leg after information processing errors, meaning that behavioral biases cause you to process information incorrectly and come up with the wrong expectations. The other leg are behavioral biases. And here, even if there are no information processing errors, so your forecasts are actually correct, you still might make bad decisions due to these behavioral biases. So the first one we'll talk about, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, there exist others besides these, is framing. And the decision, the outcome changes based on just the way we present the choice, but without actually fundamentally changing the choice. So a risk tolerance questionnaire can change based on the way risk is described. It can change based on recent history, so your current sort of position relative to recent history. The spin the wheel example is a good one. So if you remember this, there are two choices. Choice one, you spin a wheel with 100 slots, and if slots 1 through 99 comes up, nothing happens. But if the 100th slot comes up, you got to pay 10 grand, or you can pay $100 not to spin, and people choose to spin the wheel. But if we frame this same decision as car insurance, then people choose to pay the $100. So framing makes a big difference in terms of how people make their decisions. And the expectations are very easy to figure out in both these situations, but if I present it one way versus presenting it the other, that causes the decision to change. And so that's what's meant by framing. The second is this idea of mental accounting. And this refers to separating decisions into sort of different mental accounts. So I have the high risk account and the low risk account. Well, both are your accounts. So you'll do riskier in some situations, but much safer in other situations. But really, they are both situations that affect you in the exact same way. You're just choosing to account for them differently based on some sort of arbitrary condition. So for example, in a casino, you're playing a decision with won money or the casino's money or some sort of trading profits, but it's still your money. The other is something called loss aversion, and this one's a little goofy. The idea is that people are reluctant to realize a loss. And so I have a stock and one went up and one went down, and they'll sell the winners, but they won't sell the losers. And this is contrary to, a tax minimization strategy in which realized gains are taxed. I should actually not sell the winners. I should actually sell the losers, but people don't do it. So here's how to think about this. A stock's price is $20, and you should decide whether or not you want to sell it based on the current price and where you think the price is going to go. But we absolutely observe that for this $20 stock, people who paid $30 for it are more reluctant to sell it versus people who paid $10 for it. Because if you paid $10, it's a winner. If you paid $30, then it's a loser. And the sort of classic joke line is that, well, it was a trade, but now it's an investment. So you expected it to go up right away, and when it didn't, you're going to hang on to it until it goes up. So loss aversion, you're not really worried about risk, but you're worried about losses. And this idea of mental accounting, segregating things into different accounts based on these other sort of arbitrary conditions. The next is something called regret avoidance. Regret avoidance, people have more regrets when a bad decision is more unconventional. Okay, so I lost money in the housing market in 2008, but so did everybody else, so it's not that big a deal, and what could I do? So the idea is that blue chip losses on very big and very popular stocks are easy to accept than losses in, say, a startup company where this is much more unconventional. And this can also lead to herding behavior. So we overpay for large growth or glamour stocks because everybody's buying them, so you get in them. And maybe this is what causes some of the size or book to market effects where stocks are big and people buy them and then they get bigger, or stocks are overpriced and they get overpriced. And this could lead to some of the bubbles we've seen in tech stocks or housing or, other bubbles that we'll talk about. The last one is prospect theory, and we'll come back and talk about prospect theory all on its own.